Yeah, the non-traditional season this spring has been fairly similar to 2 years past in the sense that for the most part that first month is primarily focused on conditioning, weight training, some individual skill work with the players in groups is basically six. And then basically around the first week of March we got into what we would consider our non-traditional season, our spring season. We started basically working together as a group. We had a couple of spring games prior to spring break up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, which went pretty well. Then we basically had the break, the 2-weekend break for spring break, and then basically reconvened again and had another 2 contests in High Point, North Carolina. And those contests again, once again, went pretty well. And then basically we're starting to get towards the tail end of our spring season. We've got a contest here on Wednesday with Coker College, and then we'll finish up the spring the following weekend, weekend after next, with our alumni game, which is always a really good way to kind of end the spring and kind of bring the guys together moving into the fall season. Recruiting itself has gone fairly well this spring. A little slower than maybe we had hoped for, maybe intended, but it's still been fairly productive. At this point in time, we return more than likely, looks like 14 players for the fall. We've got 3 players that have committed for the upcoming season. We've actually got quite a few players visiting this week and the first part of next week as well. Players we've been talking to for quite a bit, basic situation where we feel very good about them and their potential in terms of joining our program, and specifically in terms of the question you posed in terms of what types of players we're looking for. And one of the things obviously is we need players that think we have a certain level of ability, a certain level of talent that can be successful here at Francis Marion on the field. But specifically off the field, we've definitely tried to go out of our way to bring in players that we think will fit the character and the caliber of players, or individuals, that we want to represent Francis Marion University, obviously in the classroom and on off the field in the community. The summer itself is obviously fairly unique because we don't have a lot of access to the players themselves. So for the most part, a number of players will be going back home to play with the teams they played with primarily growing up. Some players will move on to play with the team over the summer. What they've kind of arranged sometimes to ourselves and obviously on their own as well. But for the most part, one of the things that I hope that they do over the summer is obviously kind of spend time working and improving and developing. But at the same time, I also want them to try to rest and relax and try to recharge, so to speak, going into the fall season. Because basically, once we get here in August, it's obviously going to be pretty intense, pretty demanding, and for the most part, we need them to be prepared emotionally just as well as physically. In terms of the summer plans for myself and my assistant Tony, it's a unique summer in the fact that the World Cup takes place here in June. So I'm sure both of us will spend a considerable amount of time in front of the television following the matches. Tony has a specific interest that his native New Zealand has qualified for the World Cup, so I know he's very excited about seeing some of his countrymen take part in basically obviously the biggest showcase in the world. But we'll definitely continue with our recruiting efforts, specifically for the 2011 season. We'll work some camps during the course of the summer as well. Part of it, like I said, to kind of identify some players. We've got a camp that we'll host here in July to kind of bring some players that we want to take a closer look at and want to give them the opportunity to kind of take a look at Francis Marion University as well.